Should have saved the puzzle.
Okay. Hey everyone, welcome back to Do What You Can for the People, the show that nobody asked for. I'm here today with my friend Maggie. We are travel buddies, friends, packaging nerds. By day, Maggie is a badass lawyer and also the mastermind of the Green Beauty Guide. And by night, she is also those things, but she likes to do some puzzles, as we were just talking about. The Green Beauty Guide is a blog dedicated to sustainability and natural beauty. And so that's what I brought Maggie on to talk about today. Hey, Maggie.
Hey, thanks so much for having me. I'm excited
My
for our talk.
pleasure. So I thought we'd start off just talking a little bit about green beauty in general.
Yeah.
There's so much greenwashing that's happening in so many industries. And I personally find personal care items to be one of those really confusing things. Like you'll hear 8 billion things about what green beauty means, and they're all kind of contradicting one another. I try to find vegan, cruelty-free, package-free, clean products, but I don't really even know what I should be looking for to make sure something is clean. So I thought I'd ask you, my resident expert, to share your thoughts.
Yeah, I mean, I think clean washing is a huge problem in the industry right now. You can't really go to any major beauty retailer without seeing a clean section. So Target and Sephora now have like clean programs, but they all kind of have different standards of measurement. So there's really no one definition. And so anytime a brand says, oh, we're clean or we're green, I kind of think of them as virtue signaling a little bit. And I give them an opportunity to say, okay, what does that mean for you?
Mm-hmm.
Because a brand could be recycling 20% of its packaging and trying to use sustainable materials, and that puts them in a clean box to them. Then you could have a brand that's doing 100% recyclable materials. You could have brands that are working only in byproduct materials, which is actually becoming a little bit more common, which is really cool. So I think for a consumer, the work is definitely on us to say, well, what's important to me? How much work am I willing to put into this? And do a little bit of research. I think the only time I will really avoid a brand entirely if they use the word clean or green is if they can't back it up at all. So if you go on their website or you look at their packaging and it's just not even clear what kind of, if they don't have the ingredients, that's ridiculous. Just generally, any brand, clean or not, if they can't provide an ingredient list, I find that really problematic, because I like to do a little bit of research and just understand what it is that I'm putting on my body. But even if they have the ingredient list, how are they sourcing? How are they using their packaging? Those are all details that are great for the consumer to be able to understand. But companies really vary on what they're willing to have transparency about. So I'm more about transparency than the label that they've given themselves. But it is, I don't mind when brands call themselves green. I think it's a good way to say, okay, you've put yourself in this box, but now you need to justify it a little bit, or else, we're going to move on to the next one.
Such a good point. I love that you make the goal transparency, because you're right. I mean, clean could mean 8 billion things. And it really is about giving the brand the opportunity to define what it means to them and seeing if you align with that.
Totally. And it's all about aligning a consumer with the brand. So I don't mind companies saying, okay, well, our version of X, Y, and Z is this. And if that doesn't align with what I'm looking for, it gives me the option to just move on. I think the problem is when so many brands won't give you that information, it creates a lot of confusion. And also a lot of consumers don't have time to be standing there reading through labels and figuring things out. So I do also appreciate when brands can get certified by well-known organizations. Like if you have an EcoCert certification, you have Leaping Bunny, that's going to make it very clear for the consumer, okay, well, vegan and cruelty-free is important to me. These certifications clearly mean something. Saying you're clean is not a certification. Frankly, it doesn't mean shit. So it's really on you to understand, okay, these types of labels have clearly defined parameters. These types of labels are really just marketing, but they could mean that actually this is a brand that I should support and might line up with my values.
This isn't something I sent you in the prep questions, but I would just love to know, as we're talking, do you think that there is a future or an opportunity, though, for the beauty industry to come together and kind of agree on what their definition of clean is?
They're definitely trying.
Okay.
So I know there are big Beauty Independent has been doing a really great series with brand founders kind of across the spectrum of clean and more conventional, of understanding what these marketing terms mean. And there are definitely a lot of conferences where brands will come together and talk about what it means. I think there is a space for it, but I think also it's like having brands define what sustainability means. It's more of a theme rather than a set idea. And I actually kind of like that. I think brands need that space to express themselves, because that's how you push the conversation forward. Now, when brands say, okay, we're organic, we're certified USDA organic, that clearly means something. And that I feel more comfortable saying, well, we have government regulatory agencies that have clearly set out parameters. They're verifying it every year. It's a lot of work for the brands, and it's very difficult for small brands to get to that point because it's a huge expense and it's a lot of time. But I like that we have those boxes. I don't know if clean needs to be that box, but I think brands need to recognize, if you're not going to have a clearly defined industry accepted term, don't act like it's a clearly defined industry accepted term, because it's not.
Right.
Just kind of embrace it for what it is and let it be this space for brands to try new things that hopefully have the goal of promoting environmental conservatorship, being more sustainable. There's now blue beauty, which has more to do with the impact that the brand has on the planet. I kind of love that there's all this creative freedom. I just don't like it when a brand tries to slap a clean label on something and say, we're not going to back it up. Don't ask us any questions. You should just trust us, because that's, I think, where we get into some trouble.
No, trust no one.
Trust no one.
So then what do you look specifically when you're evaluating a brand? For some of us noobs who are just going to go to Sephora and like look at an aisle and be completely overwhelmed, what are like a few key things that we should be keeping an eye out for?
I mean, I definitely think transparency is a big one. For me, sourcing transparency is great. I love being able to do a deep dive on a company's website and see where they're sourcing ingredients, because there's a lot of nuance to that. Palm oil, for example, is a really great story for a lot of brands, because it's a sustainable resource. It's just been done in an unsustainable way in a lot of countries. And so there are some brands like Osmio Organics who have had very in-depth research done on their sourcing of palm oil. And they've said, actually, we back up our suppliers 100%. We have made sure we're getting palm oil from habitats where it's not endangering the native animal populations. And even though it's easier to say we're palm oil free, and now everybody's happy on that bandwagon, we actually think we can do good work in the communities that we source from. So we're going to keep doing it, but we're going to do it in the right way. That to me is great. I would rather see that than a brand that says we're 100% natural, which for a lot of brands just means we don't use synthetics. There's a really interesting debate about that, because for a lot of ingredients, a synthetic version might be more sustainable. If you think about, you need, I think it's 10,000 pounds of rose petals to create an ounce of rose oil. Yeah, which is why natural perfumes are so expensive. Yeah. And I think they're superior in a lot of ways. I only wear natural perfumes, but I also recognize, well, if I'm just talking about sustainability, there's no way that the natural version is more sustainable than a synthetic. That being said, I think that's why it justifies a higher price point. And I think that's why I want fewer fragrances in my products, because when it is in there, I want it to be really high quality. So I think knowing your ingredients helps. It's definitely a rabbit hole. I mean, you could be spending all week on a single ingredient just doing research, but brands that are transparent are great. And I kind of think about, if you're just starting to wanting a simpler skincare routine, maybe something that feels more natural to you, it's kind of the same way you shop at a farmer's market, right? Like, what's the difference between a loaf of bread that you get at Whole Foods with preservatives in it and a loaf of bread at the farmer's market? It's not going to have preservatives, but that also means you need to eat it in 3 days, or you need to freeze it. So, do you want something that's a little bit simpler that you can understand, or do you want something that is equally of comparable quality? Maybe it's just going to be composed of different ingredients, and you need to just respect what it is that you're getting. I really like feeling like I'm connected to brands and to the places where they're sourcing the ingredients. So that to me is more important than, oh, it's 100% this, it's no synthetics for here. I think I have a pretty clear set of values that I align with. No animal testing, that's a big one. That's a little harder, especially with the bigger brands. But I think, you do a little bit of research and then make sure the brands are clearly letting you know where they fit on that spectrum.
Yeah, and I love what you said about, the preservatives thing and finding something that aligns with your values. I think you also have to think about what your personal use case is.
Yes.
So one huge thing about sustainability for me at least is trying to be zero waste. So if
Hmm.
I bought a face cream that, had to be used in 3 days or had to be refrigerated and I didn't know that and then I had to throw it away, I feel like the
Yeah.
impact of that is so much greater than just buying the damn thing with preservatives,
Exactly. And like preservatives are not going to kill you, but a moldy product is not a good thing to have on your shelf. So this whole, oh, it's preservative free. I'm like, I don't want something that's not preserved necessarily. And I see your point on the no pack on the, lower packaging or more sustainable packaging. I think a lot of brands are starting to use less water because you get a more concentrated product. And then if it's a solid product, you don't need as much packaging, which is great because it takes
Yeah.
up less room on your shelf.
Yeah. It's a great segue. Let's talk a little bit about sustainable packaging, which is something that you and I have talked about often,
Yes.
especially about beauty products. I thought I'd just start off with a few fun facts that I found. So, mascara was originally sold in cake form, like a little brick of mascara that either came in a metal or a cardboard box, and it was sold with this little brush that you had to then apply very gently. And then in 1958, Revlon introduced the first modern mascara in a tube with a spiral tip wand. Blush, or what it used to be called rouge, was originally sold in liquid form, and in the 1920s it was made available in powder, paste, or cream form and sold in aluminum tins. And so we're seeing today a lot of sustainable innovations that fall under the reduce, reuse, recycle principles of the circular economy, and some of that goes back to these vintage techniques. So one brand that we both love is Besame, and they actually have the cake mascara in the tin. And we're seeing that companies are using more recycled plastics. Again, they're trying to find what fits with their business model, with their brand strategy. And so I'd love for you to talk to us about, do you think that that's enough, that, using recycled products and going through this process of finding what fits for them, but maybe it's not quite there yet? What are your thoughts on how the beauty industry is handling packaging?
I think they're definitely, consumers are asking for it. So brands are definitely trying. And I think they're seeing the commercial benefit of it, which is especially if you have a reusable packaging that's designed for your product, you're kind of locking in a consumer into, okay, well, I have the packaging. Now I'm going to reorder from you.
Yeah.
So I just got the Blue Land, the box of all their cleaning supplies. Well, I now know if I run out of soap, I'm just going to reorder those tablets. I'm not going to go and buy something from the grocery store because I've already got it and I know how easy it is to use. So they've kind of locked me in as a consumer, which was really smart because I frankly don't know anything about how effective the cleaning products were. I just heard it was a great brand and I really liked the way they were addressing the packaging issue because I know under my sink I probably have 15 bottles of Clorox and Windex and all these other cleaning supplies. I'm like, I don't even know what half of these do. I just want a color-coded bottle that labels it and tells me what I need. So I do think brands are trying to respond to the consumer demand right now. And I think it's just again, it's a nuanced conversation. If you switch from plastic to glass, well, that's better, but are you really decreasing the environmental impact if glass is so much heavier? It has more carbon offsets required if you're going to be shipping it long distances. It's really only recyclable in some circumstance, like maybe you have to take the label off. I think a lot of brands, Full Lane, are doing some pretty cool stuff with TerraCycle.
Mm-hmm.
You can actually go in, and I've done this before where I brought in like a bag of products, and whoever the sales associate is will stand there with me and like make sure the components are taken apart appropriately, which I'm really surprised by because usually I was like, just dump it in the box and move on with my day. And once you open up especially with makeup, like a pump foundation, you realize there are so many components in those products. And some are glass, some are plastic, some are metal. And so it's nice that there are companies who are willing to say, you send it to us and we'll take care of the rest. Because frankly, like most people are not going to spend the time to take apart pieces I remember we were in Tokyo and doing the recycling on the last day was one of the most complex mental exercises I have ever had to go through. Just identifying the plastics and
Yeah.
delabeling things and taking the lids off bottles. It was like, that was eye-opening.
I tell that story about the recycling in Tokyo all the time. And I tell people it was really complex, but also I've never been more turned on by a recycling system in a country. Like I was living my best life.
It was impressive. I mean, at that point, I think we were just ready to check out of the Airbnb, but I was like, I respect the hell out of this system because
Oh yeah.
it was the first time I had ever stopped to consider different types of plastic, like read the label. And until you're forced to do that, frankly, you just don't. I mean, you have no incentive to do it. So I think brands are starting to wise up to making these types of recycling options more available to consumers and designing their packaging around streamlining the back end process. So it's not enough to just say this is recyclable, but you also have to make sure the consumer's not going to come back and say, no, it's not. Only 20% of this was recyclable and I threw it all in the recycle bin and now my recycling's compromised.
Yeah, and I think also it's on the brands to do the education because the consumers are demanding it, but I don't necessarily feel like the consumer knows how
Yeah.
many pieces go in and they don't know how to properly recycle it. So one option is to do the education and tell people how to do recycling properly. The other option is, like you said, to collect it back and have that reverse logistics system and take ownership of it. So I think it'll be exciting to see what happens in the future with these two options. You have a refillable foundation that you wanted to show.
Yes, so this is the Kyra Weiss Foundation. This is kind of like the gold standard in refillable packaging for clean / natural color cosmetics. So these boxes are, they're almost like a leather printed recyclable materials. They look like leather, but they're actually, I think, some sort of cardboard. I know it's recyclable. What's impressive is I've had this compact for 2 years and it's still in the box because they just make the packaging look so good. This is what the compacts look like. So this is just a regular foundation compact. They have other sizes for eyeshadows, for some of like the blushes and the bronzers. They are cream and powder products. So as you can see, this is a very well-loved foundation. And it's designed by a really prominent design firm. So it's weighty. I mean, it feels heavy and it feels like something you would want to keep. So I wanted to show you, because this one is about empty and I have the refill here. So I wanted to show you quickly how easy it is. So you buy the refill and it literally just comes labeled like this. This is cardboard. So this is, you just throw this in recycling. You get this little pan that's covered. So it's not like makeup, that's just out. And so what you'll do is you'll pop it in and then you can take the little piece of paper off. So you open it up. I'm not going to show it to you again because it's very dirty. And in the back here, you can see there's a tiny, tiny little hole. You just take a pin, pop the pin in, and it literally slides out.
So easy.
Magnetic, because you're not going to be recycling it anyway. And you just take this and you pop it in.
Amazing.
Yeah. I mean, it is expensive. It's on par with like a premium foundation brand. But again, I've now had this for 2 years. I've gone through 4 refills. I think that was my 5th refill. And at one point, I actually ended up getting another one on accident. I ordered the wrong size compact. So what I did, I was working on a gift for a friend, is made a solid perfume and just poured it in there.
Love that.
So this is now going to a girlfriend who obviously knows it's not a new product, but made a perfume for her, pop it in. And then it just looks, I mean, I just think these look super chic.
Yeah.
They last forever. I mean, they're heavy. Even when they're empty, they're heavy. So they're not exactly the most travel-friendly thing, but I brought this with me everywhere. And you can see it takes 30 seconds to do those refills. And the shipping impact of this little guy versus shipping a new one of these is night and day.
Yeah.
So I really love it. I mean, I think it's a great idea. I think it helps that it was designed by a makeup brand. Kirsten Kyra Weiss is a makeup artist, and I think she knows her consumer, and people are willing to pay a higher premium for products that they feel like they can keep and they can keep out because they look good and they work really well. So to me, this is like the epitome of all the things a brand should be doing if they're committing to reusable packaging. And frankly, they do recyclable packaging as well. So I think, yeah, in terms of an example of like a great brand that's showing up for what they say they're doing, they do a really nice job.
And I think it's important to remember, so one of the unique features of the beauty industry is that it's a luxury good. And
Yep.
so when you think about packaging, it's important for the branding. You can't just get rid of it altogether. That's not how the industry works. But you do also have an opportunity to make it feel like something that people want to keep on their counter. They
Yeah.
want to show it off. It makes them feel fancy and special. So they are willing to pay the premium in that industry.
Yeah, and frankly, I know people that use this brand that could care less about the sustainable impact, but they're like, it's just a good looking product. And frankly, it also works incredibly well. It's a very concentrated, especially their foundations, very concentrated formulas. So you do not need very much of those at all. She also does skincare, and I haven't used the skincare as much, but I'm intrigued by it. And I think brands are starting to recognize like we can't just put like a green leaf on something and sell it at Whole Foods and think we're going to make like a larger change in the consumer base. We need to really step it up. And that also means you're going to be spending a lot more money. So I think some people don't love that more natural brands are on par price wise with, you know, a Chanel or a YSL foundation. But frankly, I feel like if the product works and it looks good, that's what I care about, especially with color cosmetics. So I like that they're taking themselves seriously and they're not just putting themselves in the box of we need to be crunchy earth mama. Yeah. Everything's made of rolled oats. It's just, you don't get excited about that. I mean, no. I kind of do sometimes. There's a time and a place for a rolled oat, but I think on a day-to-day basis, I love picking up like a heavy weighted compact, feeling like I'm putting something really beautiful on, and it makes me feel good about the impact that my hard-earned money is going towards.
Yeah, awesome. So let's wrap up with a fun activity. You are going to show me and all of us how to make a hand scrub out of things that we already have at home. And this is something that I think we all need because I've washed my hands, I don't know, like 8 billion times in the past 6 weeks.
So many times. There's nothing left of my hands, actually. It's just a nail.
Lotion is not cutting it anymore. So let's get into this. I'm going to let you drive and you tell me.
Okay, cool. So I put these in little glasses, but I have about a half cup of coarse ground coffee. And frankly, you can use pretty much any type of ground coffee. I like to use a pretty coarse grind because I use this as a body scrub also. This smells so good. I just love the smell of fresh ground coffee. It works really well because it won't clog up your sink. I really hate scrubs that I feel like just linger. And this is easy. Everybody's got, hopefully, right now, everybody's got coffee.
All right. Question for you. Could you use like used coffee grounds?
So that's funny because I've actually tried this recipe and I meant to say something at the beginning. You could, used coffee grounds will be wet with water. So immediately the second you introduce water into any product, you increase the risk that it's going to get moldy or have bacterial growth. If you were hopping in the shower and you had some coffee grounds and wanted to make this like right away, go for it. I do think it gets a little gloopy. Somehow introducing the water just dunks it up a little bit, but like you could use it, and I have occasions used it. I just wouldn't keep it.
Got it.
So once there's water in it, use it. Okay, then equal parts sugar. You can use brown sugar. I've just got some regular white cake sugar because I'm making all the unhealthy banana bread right now.
Aren't we all? If you haven't made banana bread yet, I don't understand what you're doing in quarantine.
I know.
Okay, let's see if I can do this without making a full mess. All right.
And actually, if you're using brown sugar, that's even better because it's got a little bit more grit to it, which I like. We're just out of brown sugar, but you can really use any type of sugar that you have. And what's nice is if you want like a really fine scrub, you could use something like white sugar and a super fine ground coffee. That's perfect. And if you wanted like a body scrub that's got a little bit more grit to it, you could use coarse ground coffee, brown sugar. Perfect.
Awesome.
All right. So here we go. Dumping it in. Give it a little stir just to mix it all up.
Resist the urge to eat it.
I know, right? It smells amazing, and it's going to smell even better because I have a bonus ingredient. Okay, then I've got just some extra virgin olive oil. I actually like it when it smells pretty olivey. So do about a tablespoon, give it a stir, and then see where you're at. So I'm just gonna dump directly in there.
Sweet.
It's gonna start looking like brownie batter. It will not taste like brownie batter.
Although, I mean, if you wanted to eat it, you could.
Good.
You might regret it.
Another tablespoon of the oil here.
A bit more.
And you don't want it to be like a complete muddy mess. You just want it to be enough that when you lift it with your hand, it doesn't just totally fall apart.
I think I'm there.
Yeah. So then once you have gotten all your edges, this also, I mean, this is a great little gift to give people, but especially now, I just have been blowing through body scrub and hand scrub, and I don't feel the need to go out and buy more.
Yeah.
Substitution, and especially because this is just an oil-based one right now, this will keep pretty well. If you're going to keep this in the shower, just be aware that as soon as you get water in it, if you have a wet hand and you scoop, now there's water in it, it's going to go bad a lot faster. So what I like to do is just to have a jar in the bathroom and then put some in like a little plastic container and scoop it out. I don't love glass in the shower. That's one of the things I'm struggling with some of these brands. I love the beautiful glass bottles, but then I don't want to, you know, cut myself if I inevitably drop something in the shower, which I do frequently. So I have a bunch of plastic bottles in the shower that I just decant all the other products into and hope I remember. And then the last ingredient that I have is actually some peppermint oil.
Mm-hmm.
This is going to make it smell like a peppermint mocha, which I love.
Yum.
I just love. So one thing I will say about essential oils, which people in the green/natural space tend to gloss over, and it alarms me to no end, is that you should not put essential oils directly onto your skin. I think because people think they are natural, they are not going to hurt you. But it's actually kind of the opposite. Essential oils are incredibly powerful. They are a super concentrated version of different parts of a plant in most cases. So for some essential oils, or like absolutes, the petals, or it's the leaves, or it's the stems, if you apply essential oils directly to your skin, you have a greater risk of sensitizing your skin. So things like cinnamon, citrus oils especially, even peppermint, if you have sensitive skin, you could actually really cause an adverse reaction. I know some people put tea tree oil on like breakouts. I've never tried that. I would be wary of doing it myself because I've just had some bad reactions to essential oils in the past, and they're not diluted. So that's why when you see a product that goes onto your skin, it's diluted in a carrier oil usually. So it's like in a roller ball with jojoba. It's something super simple. You could certainly make it yourself, but you shouldn't be like splashing on peppermint oil. So, you know, I'm putting like 5 or 6 drops in this.
Right.
5 or 6 drops on my skin could actually give me a pretty adverse reaction. So I encourage people, if they want that, you know, the beautiful aroma therapeutic effect of essential oils, just be aware that they're very powerful ingredients and they should not be directly ingested or put on the skin.
Listen, we live in a day and age where you need to make those disclaimers, unfortunately.
Well, yeah, and I mean, especially with people with like young children, I've heard women in stores who have said, oh, I'm putting lavender oil directly on my baby, and I'm like, don't do that. Please don't do that. Like, there are amazing resources for people who want to learn about essential oils, and there is a book by Robert Tisserand all about the dermal limits of essential oils and like safety precautions. The fact that there is a full textbook that has been used for like 20 years on dermal limits means it's not something to mess around with. So I love essential oils. I have boxes and boxes of them. I do not put them on my skin directly.
Noted.
Now we're just mixing this up, and it smells so good.
Smells really good, even without the peppermint, which I'm definitely going to buy because mint chocolate anything is my favorite. I actually am using a mint chocolate Talenti for this.
Oh, yes. And you know what? Those Talenti jars are the perfect thing to store these scrubs in. The absolute perfect thing. I might actually go hunt one down
It's a great excuse to buy ice cream too. It's like, oh, I just need more Talenti jars to store my homemade cosmetics.
I need Tupperware. So I actually had a little, like a salsa jar that I thought I had sterilized properly, and I opened it up and it still smelled a little salsa-y. So usually I would be just mixing it directly in like a salsa jar. But pasta jars too are the nicest way to store things like this where you make them in bulk, because they're pretty big and they're skinny, so they fit in your bathroom. I've done that with like bath soaks, just easy 2-3 ingredient recipes. They're just nice to have in your bathroom. And frankly, I think there are products where you want to buy a nice version. Something like a bath soak, it's just going to be magnesium. It might be some like Himalayan salt. There is literally no reason. I was just on the Goop website the other day, and there's some beautiful products on there, but one of them is a bath soap that literally has 3 ingredients, and it was like $30. The whole bag cost $30, like a 5-pound bag of these salts costs $30. There's no reason for you to buy stuff like that. So that's why I love reading ingredient labels, because sometimes you can read something and say, I legitimately could make this.
Yeah.
And I don't need a complex preserving system because there's no water in it. You know, I can put some bath salts, a little bit of essential oil, shake it up, and have a nice bath.
Yeah. And be ready to go. Don't even need anything else.
It smells amazing.
I love this. I'm so glad that you taught me how to make this, because it's going to change my life, and it's going to change everyone's lives. I mean, 3
Christmas gift.
Yeah.
/ quarantine gift for.
Awesome. This is going to go right next to my sink. It's going to go right next to my sink. Okay. Well, Maggie, this has been wonderful. Thank you so much for sharing your insights and your tips and the demos. I'll be sure to include links in the description box so people can find your website, get in touch. We can make a little tribe of packaging nerds and all hang out. Do you have anything else that you'd like to say?
No, I mean, I think we cover a lot of really fun topics. It is such an exciting space to be in right now, because there's so many people who are really committed to making positive change. And I think instead of making people feel guilty about, oh, you're not doing the right type of clean green packaging and clean green products, I think just engaging with brands that clearly seem to be walking the walk and supporting those brands, especially now when a lot of them are smaller and are really struggling to keep up sales. I think now is a great time to be trying out new brands that clearly are committed to a positive, sustainable message. And it's a great place to spend your money. So I'm excited. I love being in the space, and it's fun to nerd out with you on the packaging side of things.
Yeah, we have a good time with it. And I think also, just to close things out, we're all sitting at home right now. So take the time to look up the brands that you're currently using at the very least and see what their story is, and make sure that you are doing your part to hold them accountable with your buyer power.
I love it. Buyer power is that's exactly what it is. Love it.
All right, Maggie, thanks for joining us, and tune in next time, guys, for more fun stuff.